doing?
Good evening, everyone. It's interesting to see faces out here tonight, given that we spent about a year before we got to a point where we could actually see some faces. So welcome. Thank you all for being here. It's a pleasure to have you here with tonight, either joining in person or virtually. I think we'll keep our standing virtual meeting in place and continue to allow folks to follow along with us virtually. So again, thank you for being here. I will now call our regularly scheduled June 10th, 2021 Town Council meeting to order. I will first ask Councilman Hinkle if he would provide an invocation, which will be followed by our Pledge of Allegiance. We ask that you stand and follow us along with the pledge.
We may bow our heads for a minute, please. Oh Lord, bless this meeting tonight and guide this council as we make important decisions affecting this community and people's lives. May we realize your many blessings extended to us all in this great country, and may we always be mindful of your will that we help the less fortunate and treat others as we wish to be treated ourselves. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that, Mr. Hinkle. Council, you have your packets in front of you. Are there any adjustments to tonight's agenda? I do believe there are 3 items that we need to address, but are there any motions to address tonight's agenda?
Mr. Mayor, we would like to add one thing to the agenda to go into closed session for property acquisition.
Okay.
I do not recall that statute number off the top of my head.
I'm going to ask our attorney to give me that statute number.
143, 318, 11.
A4, maybe? A3?
Is it A3?
We just split the difference. Okay. Any other motions?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion, please.
Okay.
I would like to make a motion that the public hearing for the voluntary annexation of AX-21-01 for project name Winecoff Village, as listed in agenda item number 9, be continued to July the 8th, 2021 Troutman Town Council meeting.
Okay.
Also, I'd like to make a motion that the public hearing for the voluntary annexation of AX 21-02 for the project named Westmoreland Village is listed in the agenda item number 10 to be continued to July the 8th, 2021 Troutman Town Council meeting. And one more. I'd like to make a motion to add under recognitions introduction of Patrol Officer Chad Trivett and to add a closed session pursuant, but we've already done that.
No,
I don't need to,
that's a
Oh.
different one.
okay, pursuant,
Yep.
no, we're not going to do that closed session.
And also Officer Tripp
Tripp,
is
okay.
unable to be with us this evening.
Okay, just the first two, please.
Darren's still gonna recognize it.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and recognize him. I'll put his picture up.
Okay, so we'll just keep that motion just to recognize and introduce Patrol Officer Chad Trivett.
Okay. So we have 3 items, amendments to the agenda. To his motions, first to continue the public hearing for annexation on AX 2101, project name Winecoff Village. And I'll do these two as 2 motions if I'm in order, Gary, or do they need to be separate?
Take them as one combined motion.
Okay. And a motion to continue the public hearing for voluntary annexation AX 2102 for Westmoreland Village. Is there a motion to continue those 2 until July 8th, 2021?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I
Go
mean,
ahead.
I'm sorry, the
No, I'm
motion's
just-
on the floor. Is there a second?
Yeah, I second the motion that Councilman Williams made.
Thank you. Any question or comment? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Now, is there a motion to approve our agenda as amended to include the closed session as requested by Mr. Wyatt?
I'll make that motion.
Motion's on the floor to amend our agenda with the motions and the recommended closed session. Is there a second? Any other question or comment
Did Sally not make that motion already? Would it take a second, right?
for the closed session?
Yeah.
Not for this closed session,
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
no.
Any other question or comment? Okay. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. We will now follow our agenda as amended. The next item on the agenda is consent items, and these are items which are considered routine by the council and will be approved with one motion. There will be no separate discussion on those items unless requested by council. We have several sets of minutes, a building elevation or building elevations for a Burger King, a change to the loads of Troutman, a year-end budget amendment, and approval of the First Amendment of the interlocal agreement between surrounding towns, creating the Lake Norman Regional Transportation Commission. Is there a motion to approve our consent agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Take your pick.
Councilman Mallett.
Motion is made, received a second. Any question or comment? Hearing none. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. The next item on our agenda is recognitions and presentations. And we've got some outstanding recognitions. I'll first turn it over to our interim chief, Darren Payne, for introduction of our investigator and our patrol officer.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Yeah, a little bit of, not mess up today, but just to give you a background on why we're going ahead and introducing Officer Trivett. He was here at work today, fell ill with kidney stone. So we decided, having any confusion with him and everything else, we decided we wouldn't add it.
Go one more, and then we'll back up to that one.
Officer Chad Tripp.
Okay.
He was born and raised Knoxville, lived there his whole life, exception a few years. He moved to Ashe County in 2008. That's where he resided there for about 4 years. While living there, he attended Brooks Community College and earned his basic law enforcement training certificate there. After graduation, he moved back to Davie County and began his law enforcement career at the Sheriff's Department there as a deputy. He worked for Davie County Sheriff's Office for about 6.5 years. He was duly sworn and had held a position part-time with West Jefferson Police Department for almost 7 years. 2018, he left the Sheriff's Office and began a career in 2019 with Knoxville Police Department. He worked there as a senior officer and patrol supervisor and has now been hired with us. We're glad to have him. He has a wife, Jessica, 3 children, Ava, 13, Braden, 11, and Tucker, 22 months old. So, but great addition. And go on to the next one, which is the investigator, Cameron Jones, also from Knoxville Police Department, from us. And of course, you know the events there, but we're glad to have these two good officers. Investigator Jones was born and raised in Wilkesboro, North Carolina. He started his law enforcement career in Iowa County Sheriff's Office in 2007 as a detention officer. He worked his way up to the Road Patrol and was transferred to criminal investigations in 2011. While as a detective with the Sheriff's Office, he was assigned to homicide teams and as a certified hostage negotiator. Detective Jones left the Sheriff's Office and pursued another career and was hired at Knoxville in 2018, where he was a road patrol officer and was promoted within a year in 2019. Jones worked as an investigator with Knoxville Police Department until hired here just back in May. So Detective Jones has a wife, Christy, she's here, and also stepson, Chase, who's 14. Stand up. It's a great addition to our department.
Come here, show us pictures.
Pictures?
For the media, because they're not here tonight.
They're not here?
We need one on file as well. Thank you.
Okay.
If you'll step back toward the council on the other side of that. Try to not get this podium.
You want my hand?
Okay. Debbie and her family weren't able, or the media wasn't able to be here tonight.
Which one are we looking at?
Right here. And then I want to get one with your families.
We just cut the mayor out.
We can step
No,
behind.
no.
We can split it like this.
All right.
Outstanding. It's good. Thank you.
You're short, you get this.
Thank you. Then you just want a family?
I see him one, I see hers.
I used to get pushed out.
There we go. Thank you.
We look forward to Investigator Jones continuing to serve our community. Welcome back, as I said to you when I saw you the other day. Glad to have you back in Troutman in this area. So appreciate your service to our community. Please do the same for all of our patrolmen, but Patrol Officer Jones, let him know. Thank you. Trivet, excuse me, yes. So next item is we've got a couple of recognitions here. I'm extremely impressed by the fact that this first one I get to meet for the first time, and the second I have worked literally side by side with. So I look forward to these recognitions tonight. The first is I did not pick the pictures, Miss Powell. I promise that was not me. Miss Billy Joe Powell is a lifelong resident of what she says is the best small town in the world. Born in the heart of Troutman, she's a walking history book. As a toddler, she watched from her front porch from across the depot as the trains passed by. As a teenager, she went to the local skating rink or theater. As a newlywed, she lived in the apartments over what is now Randy's Barbecue. In later years, if you went to Dr. Griffin's office, which I did, she probably greeted you at the counter. If you went to Dart department store, you probably saw her there, as she and her husband had interest in the business. If you bought something at the concessions at Troutman Industries, you probably paid her, as she had her sister ran their father's store after his passing. Now in her mid-90s, you might find Miss Powell delivering meals to the homebound, calling to check on folks, or at one of the local businesses talking with and encouraging people during the trying times. Ms. Powell has been a part of First United Methodist Church, active member, has taught Sunday school, and church is still very important to her. For nearly 30 years, while Mayor Lauren Powell led the town, she stood by his side. She has attended more ribbon cuttings than she can remember as the town added industries during Mayor Powell's tenure. She worried and prayed when he would go out on a fire call, listening to the scanner. She kept close by. Occasionally, she was a sounding board late in the evenings after a stressful town board meeting, which we never have those these days. He was the face of Troutman, while she was the wife who provided strength, support, and love. This was an application that was part of an application that was on a nomination, but we thought it was so important to recognize Ms. Powell as a pillar in our community, and I want to make sure that I read a recognition that we have drafted for you, which states, this certificate of recognition on behalf of the town of Troutman, town council, Troutman town's residents, and the greater Troutman community. Myself, Mayor T. Ross Young, hereby recognizes Billy Joe Powell for her lifelong dedication and service to the Troutman community. While never seeking applause, she was a supportive wife and mother during her late husband's tenure as mayor for nearly 30 years, as she served her church through many capacities, delivered meals while offering a smiling face of encouragement during the COVID-19 pandemic, and continues to care for local homebound friends and neighbors. Signed this day, June 10th, 2021. I'd like to give this to you and give you an opportunity, if you'd like to speak, to do so.
I think all that has been said, but I just want to thank you so very, very much, whoever's responsible for this coming to me. Okay, thank you. I'd like to say something.
I think she would, and she probably helped.
Mother had already said that all she was going to say was thank you, and if there was anything else to be said, I was going to say it. So I would just say, to me, it's an honor for us to be in the Lauren Quincy Powell boardroom my daddy dedicated his life to this town, and mother has done the same. Except for the time that they were in Langleyfield, Virginia, when my daddy was in World War II, she has been in Troutman her entire life, and she's going to be 97 in September. You'd never know it.
Yeah.
But she to me is the face of Troutman.
Absolutely.
Troutman is much different than it was when she was watching the trains go by. But to me, Troutman is still the way it was with my
Right.
mother. So
Thank you so
thank you
much.
very much for recognizing her, and we pray for you all because we know what you're going through.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have a picture?
Let me picture, y'all was too quick.
How about
Oh, was the mayor? Anytime.
Mr. Mayor, you were in school with her granddaughter, Idri
Oh, absolutely.
Shay. Yeah.
That's my daughter.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Stand right here for a better
This is
background.
not to be published or anything.
Okay.
I mean, you're not with the newspaper.
No, ma'am. Stand right here, we'll get our presents out.
If you had bet, I was gonna go home. Can we use this?
Yes, we can use this.
She won't let me take one. She won't. Go ahead and grab it. Get it now. There we go. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Good to see you again.
Okay, good. Anybody got any yard work they need done?
Looks like you're pretty handy with that tractor. That's great. Thank you again, Ms. Powell. Absolutely.
For food before.
There you go. All right, the next recognition that I have to do tonight is Miss Sherry Saunders, known as Miss Sherry, inside the walls of Troutman Elementary. She has a history of supporting the youth of the town and Troutman community through local scouting groups and athletic organizations. She is the child nutrition manager at Troutman Elementary and continues this drive to benefit the children that pass through the halls of our school and to promote the Troutman brand. During the worst of the recent pandemic, she continued to place herself on the front lines of the outreach to feed and distribute nutrition to the children of this community. She spread news of the availability of the feeding program and put much personal effort into encouraging parents and organizations in the area to take advantage of this program to ensure school-age and younger children were receiving adequate food while onset schooling was not in session. She worked directly with the students of the school to make each child feel recognized and valued so that they get a sense of self-worth. She has brought local officials, law enforcement, school board, municipal leaders, and state senators into her cafeteria to interact with the students she sees daily and to give these adults a glimpse into our city. I have actually had a chance to work beside her as she has worked with the Troutman Rotary Club to put on the Breakfast with Santa in Troutman over the years. She sees her role as an advocate more than a vocation, and it shows when we see her and her smiling face when she's interacting both with the public and with the students. I'd like to read a proclamation that I have for Ms. Saunders, and I was told that it was a little hard to get some photos of her because normally she's taking the pictures, but we did steal a few. So this says certificate of recognition on behalf of the town of Troutman, town council, town residents, and the greater Troutman community. I, Mayor T. Ross Young, recognize Sherry Saunders for her love, compassion, and dedication in supporting the children and youth in our community through work, local scouting, and athletics. Ms. Saunders was instrumental in assisting with community outreach programs to guarantee that children were provided adequate nutrition during the COVID-19 pandemic, and for having a positive impact, and it eluded great efforts to ensure that these and all children feel a sense of belonging and self-worth. I have seen all of this personally, and I appreciate everything that you do for our community. You are the face of many children, and many of them that I know have come through your cafeteria line and have been extremely pleased to have a warm meal and is able to learn. So you are a vital part of our community, and we appreciate it.
Get this to me.
Make sure it's
Thank you.
I'm not much to say, and I get emotional. Maybe I could say, he could do it for me. But this last year has been one that I don't think any of us could have foreseen. We've delivered meals on buses to children in the community. On vans, car rider lines. We've had dinosaurs out there trying to get there. I've seen you out, when we were in the car rider line, as he lives right across from Troutman Middle School. We've delivered meals to the classroom. We've had a very difficult year, so I very much appreciate this recognition, and I thank you for it.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I say something?
Yes, ma'am.
I have worked along Sherry. I used to teach at Troutman Elementary, so I know what a good job she does, and she's a hard worker, and I commend you and all the ladies everywhere that work in school cafeterias, because that is not an easy job to do.
It's a team. It takes a team to run that place, and there's a lot, the ladies at Troutman Elementary School are fantastic. They've gone above and beyond this year to do a lot of things that we would have never thought we would have to do ever. And we just started, this one day we went to a meeting, and the next day we were delivering meals. It was very difficult, but when you get out in the community and you see the children, it makes a difference.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Again, we appreciate it. All right. The next item on our agenda is public comment from visitors and guests. Give them a moment. Thank you. And you're invited to address
Hey,
the...
Ross. I'm sorry, Mayor.
Oh.
Good evening.
Good evening,
My name is Mary Starks, and I have 3 issues, and I'm actually again.
Ms. Starks.
Number 1, I'd like to know the status of the sidewalk for Tally Street. Number 2, I'd like to know what we need to do to get a light out here on Tally Street after I see that we have one up in Hill Haven where there's hardly any traffic. And number 3 is, one of the police officers explained to us that they didn't patrol our church yard because we were not in the city, not in the city limits. So I'd like to find out about that.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Starks?
You want me to do that now, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
I don't. Ms. Starks, it's good to see you as always.
Thank you, thank you.
The sidewalks, Jonathan and I have spoke with the state on a couple of occasions. And DOT shortfall in funding is what put the project off for at least a year and a half, 2 years, which we can't control what they do or don't do. I can just explain to you what part of that issue was. The second part of that issue was personnel here at the time of who was in charge of the project. Somebody has to be identified as the project manager for that. And to be perfectly honest and blunt with you, that ball got shifted from different person to different person. Mr. Wells here is our interim planning director. He's not full-time here by my side, Ms. Stark. And by the rules and the way that was set up, he was not allowed to be that person to oversee that project. And once I got here, and that was one of the first questions that council asked me to address back in January, and we got the answers, and it took us almost 2 months to get the state, maybe a little bit longer than 2 months, to get the state to recognize me in my official capacity as the town manager to be the project manager for that going forward. And that DOT has recognized that, and we are working on it to try to get it addressed. But we discussed it earlier today, as a matter of fact, and I can't give you any more directives than that, other than to tell you bluntly that the ball got dropped with previous personnel, and we have it now, and we're proceeding forward with it. You got any questions on that part? As far as the light goes, as soon as the light appeared north of town that you were speaking to at Hill Haven, I had 2 different council members, and the Mayor Pro Tem contacted me directly, and to be blunt, a couple of them was pretty irate, because we have asked, as the town and they as council previous, of various managers to make sure to check with DOT about having at least 2 different lights, if not 3, installed in various parts of the town. Tally was one of those, and also at the corner of Old Murlock Road, where it comes out there at the intersection of Walgreens was the other. And I contacted DOT to find out why one that far north of town without as much traffic as we see here was there, and basically it boils down to anytime we have future growth and developments that occur in the area, and there's a couple that's on the agenda tonight. You will hear us use some initials like TIA or things of that nature. What TIA stands for is a traffic impact analysis. So anytime a developer is going to a certain area, there's one there beside you, Mr. Hughes, he can tell you they spend a lot of money in getting these analysis done, and DOT then reviews that process and decides what needs to happen. It could be, depending on where the project is, 4 intersections. It could be up to a mile away, what that particular neighborhood is going to do to traffic, and DOT, if it's in the county, which that one is, or if it's in our city limits, we as Troutman get input in it also to say, hey, this needs to happen, and it warrants whatever, whether it be painting a crosswalk or doing nothing or adding a traffic signal could be an option. That particular one that got stalled up there was due to a developer per DOT, as explanation to me, and the growth that was going on Wallace Springs Road in combination with the traffic impact analysis and some accidents that had occurred. The combination of those factors is what motivated them to tell a developer that was coming that you have to pay for a traffic light. So no taxes paid for that. A developer actually paid for that traffic light that went up there. And of course, it's not in our city limits at all, but that's what got council here upset with needing to take care of our citizens in town. What DOT then pledged to do was do intersection analysis, traffic impact analysis for us, at Old Murdoch Road and at Tally, because per their records, again, being blunt and straightforward, it was not earmarked as Mayor Pro Tem, and the mayor used to go to a thing called CARTPO, or Charlotte Regional Transportation
Planning organization.
is the TO part. Things like that, when we originally got the sidewalk scored for that neighborhood, for 2 times it was, or 1 time it was voted 0 and didn't get scored. Well, once it got approved, that was part of what we was hoping would be in there then, was a traffic signal. But because of their experience with CARTPO, as we call it, or CRTPO, that this came up with DOT, and analysis has been done. They have not provided us the results of that to tell us if it warrants traffic signals or not. The issue we have with Main Street out there and that intersection is that is not a town-owned street or road. That is a federal highway mandated by state funds as to the upkeep of it, so it's a combination of federal and state funds. And they give us permission on what we can or can't do on it, even though it's our Main Street. That's why it's US Highway 21 and North Carolina Highway 115, and then Troutman Main Street. So it's got 3 different names depending on which one you want to use. But once they give us those answers back, then we will be better able to communicate with the citizens of if and when traffic signals, as they call them, or traffic lights will be installed. Our feelings is, even if it's not at this time, with the development that is occurring on past your house, that most definitely it will the next time we get to score it and review it. And some of those are annual, some of them are biannual that we can ask that they be restudied. Because each particular one, depending on what kind of study they do, cost anywhere from $12,000 to $25,000 to do, so they don't just do them 2 or 3 times a year. Depending on where it's at, it will be once a year or once every 2 or 3 years, depending on how they grade it. And what was it you were saying? Oh, the church. Is your church on Rough and Loop?
No, it's on Zion Wesley Road.
I'm not familiar with that church, but I will definitely check into it and see what the answer to that is and come and visit
Going
you.
on up there.
I'm sorry?
There's been illegal activity going on up there, and we've asked for it to be addressed, and when one of your officers came out, he told them that they didn't monitor it because it was out of city limits.
I can assert you that one of 2 things is going to happen. If it's out of the city limits, and I'm not familiar with the church, so I can't say, but if it is, then we absolutely can follow up and make sure that the sheriff's office is aware of the issues that you're having. And between the 2 of us, one of the 2 will take care of whatever criminal activities afoot. Thank you, ma'am.
Any other comments from the public? Okay. Didn't get to use my timer, but we're good. Thank you. The next item on the agenda, or items, are considered new business. And the first item is a annexation request. Get my documents together here. Annexation request AX 2101, contiguous project name. We continue that. Is annexation request 2103, applicant Walmart Fulfillment Services LLC, 3.68 acres. PIN is 479-2042767, 386 Murdoch Road. I will now declare this public hearing open. Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a relatively small corner of the Walmart Fulfillment Services property over there on Murdoch Road. It became apparent to staff a couple months ago that a small corner of that development site is not inside the city limits, the town limits. I quickly contacted the agents for the property owner and made a request that the property owner provide us with a voluntary annexation request or petition, which they graciously did. I think it just makes sense, and I think it's fair to say that the Walmart folks felt the same way, that having the entire property within the town limits was preferable to having 95% of the property within the town limits and a little corner unincorporated. So they came in and made petition. The petition is determined to be sufficient and complete. And tonight the request is to consider their annexation petition request.
Any comments for Mr. Wells? Okay. Any comments from the public on this request? Okay. Hearing none, I will now declare this public hearing closed. Council, you've heard from Mr. Wells. Is there consideration for the extension of, for the adoption of Ordinance 0421 titled an ordinance to extend the corporate limits of the town of Troutman, North Carolina contiguous?
I so move, Mr. Mayor.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion is made, received a second. Any question or discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Hearing none, motion passes. The next item is a rezoning request, RZ 2101, applicant Dakota Lineberger, Sue Rogers, 063 acres located on Southeast Eastway Drive. The pins are 474-105-8046 and 474-105-8013 to rezone from heavy industrial highway to, highway business. I will now declare this public hearing open. Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Mayor. As the Mayor mentioned, this is a request filed by and on behalf of the owners of that property. It's about 2/3 of an acre. It's on the, this would be the south side of Eastway Drive, currently zoned heavy industrial. The property is vacant. You do have in your packets the staff report with quite a number of maps. We also have these maps queued up here for your information. The property immediately to the north is zoned residential, and there's a strip of heavy industrial zoning classification on the south side of Eastway that stretches east and west. And then the frontage properties on South Main Street have the highway business zoning classification. So the requested rezoning is a bit of what I would refer to as a downzoning from heavy industrial to highway business, which is consistent with the adjoining properties to the south. And I think we've got another one of those maps that does show the existing zoning of the area within, there it is, within the context of the more general vicinity there. The Planning and Zoning Board considered this matter at their most recent meeting, and their recommendation was unanimous in favor of the requested rezoning. This, I should add, was a conventional rezoning request, and it's not conditional.
Any comment from Mr. Wells?
I just wonder if Mr. Lineberger or Ms. Rogers are here.
Mr. Lamberger is.
Okay.
I'm Dakota Lineberger.
So I had heard, and please inform me correctly, that you were wanting to put a garage there?
Correct. Yes, on the business in front of that, that's also owned by Mrs. Rogers, Building
Right.
Customs.
Where the, where the detailing place used to be?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That's correct.
All right, and so you're gonna be auto repair or body work or,
Yes, we're looking to, I have the car lot up there, and
Mm-hmm.
we're looking to put a building back there just to work on some of the vehicles that we sell, and maybe a little bit to the public as well.
okay.
Down the road.
So it's basically you're gonna be selling cars.
Correct. I also have the front that we sell cars off of. I won't sell any off the back.
Right.
so to speak, for
But the
repair.
back is to repair the cars or do some work on them.
Correct.
So you're not a typical garage that if I need brake shoes put on, I can come to you.
Possibly down the road, but not at the moment.
The reason I'm asking that is because she also owns the property just to the north on Main Street that Corey Goodman is an auto mechanic and has done it for years. And I didn't know if it was going to be a competing thing or what.
No, it's mostly just for my personal use of the car lot is the main purpose of it. We're not really trying to change the use of the property.
Right.
It's just the setbacks on the industrial. It's such a small property, it makes it almost unusable. So when we get the highway business, it lessens the setbacks a little bit so we can actually build something on it.
Okay.
That's kind of what we're going for on it.
All right. Thank you.
Oh, I need to sign in here.
Please.
Yes.
Under public hearing.
Any other questions for Mr. Wells?
If I can make just an observation here, since this is a conventional rezoning, it is not tied to a particular development. So presuming that council does approve or agree to this rezoning, that does not tie Mr. Lineberger into developing any particular activity or project or scheme that he may be contemplating right now. What you would have to do is look more globally at, the whole spectrum of permitted uses within the highway business category that would be allowed by right under certain conditions such as site plan approval, et cetera, but would not necessarily be tied into what Mr. Lamberger is thinking of doing right at this point in time. And he wouldn't be under any obligation to do so either, because it's not a conditional rezoning.
Now, Jonathan, the property across the street is residential. Am I correct there? The property across the street is residential.
Across the Eastway, correct.
Across the street, Eastway. Property to the north, the rear of the property, and the property to the south. The other three other sides of the property. They are all HB or what? I was looking at this and trying. It looks like it's HB on the back. What about the north and the south? 275 and 320.
Your orange is highway business, your dark brown is your, currently your industrial.
Okay, HI, okay.
Your green is, both to the north and the south is your residential district. Town residential.
I know, well, okay, I'll bring this up a little bit later. Okay, all right, I just want, so really, this is bringing us more into conformity, I think, with surrounding on three sides, because I think that other is going to be downzoned, if you will, to highway business eventually. I can't see any heavy industrial going along there, and I can't, and for the life of me, I was trying to remember why that was done that way to begin with, but it is what it is. But we'll deal with that down the road, I guess. But I think as you and the planning and zoning stated, this is more in conformity with what is actually has happened, and is happening in that area.
Well, I think it's various shades of gray, if I can use that term, and we had that discussion at the planning and zoning board meeting where the issue was raised as to whether highway business is any closer to the recommended future land use in the strategic plan, which is civic office institutional. And the consensus was that highway business is closer to that future land use classification than is heavy industrial. And I think that was the point that kind of won the hearts over at least some of the planning and zoning board members.
Any other comments for Mr. Wells? Okay. Any other comments from the public? I will now declare this public hearing closed. The next item is to consider adoption of ordinance 0321 titled an ordinance changing the zoning classification of the after described property from heavy industrial to highway business. Is there a motion to consider the adoption of this ordinance?
Make a motion, Mr. Mayor, that we adopt ordinance 03-21.
Motion is on the floor that we adopt ordinance 0321. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made, received a second. Any other question or comment? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. The next item is for us to consider our consistency statement. Is there such a motion?
You got it?
You go ahead.
Okay, I make a motion that rezoning to highway business consistent with the 2035 future land use map to allow appropriate community service in serving commercial development in this location. The request is consistent with the currently adopted unified development ordinance. The request is reasonable and in public interest as opposed to allow commercial development in areas of Troutman where it is appropriate.
Okay, motion's on the floor that the statement is consistency statement be approved. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Motion is made, received a second. Any question or comment? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. The next item on our agenda is proposed fiscal 2021-2022 Town of Troutman budget. I will now declare this public hearing open and turn it over to Mr. Shealy.
Thank you, Mayor. The proposed budget as presented to you at your budget workshop, along with the suggested changes that you recommended, has been advertised and has been available for public inspection for the required 10 days. And I believe our town manager in his role as budget officer has a few words to say.
I take it you gave him proper instructions.
We'll see if they're proper or not.
Mr. Mayor, it's worth noting, he told me 2 days ago I had to compile this letter.
Okay.
It should have been statute.
3 days.
I was gonna say, I heard it was on Monday when you made that
Either way, it's
statement.
still not enough. All jokes aside, the Town of Troutman annual budget by its process is to some a terrible, stressful time. Each department director is taxed with having to review all the factors of the department, which include past, current, and future expected demands. They are then to review the directives given by me as town manager and wish lists from those in our community who want more. More is not just nice terms or a wish list. More to some is an improvement in the quality of life that we all desire. So adding park amenities do just that for many. Adding to greenways for walking, running, bike riding, exercise is another great example for many others. Ensuring we have enough staff to handle citizen needs and issues is definitely a great example. Former United States Secretary Jacob, or most commonly referred to him as Jack Blue of the Treasury, said, and I quote, "The budget is not just a collection of numbers, but an expression of our values and aspirations." I am pleased to work with such an awesome group of employees that understand our small town way of life. They wear multiple hats, doing more than just their assigned job duties to ensure that Troutman is the best place to live, work, and play. All that being said to you, I tender to you our 2022 fiscal year budget. There is no fanfare or hidden items in it. The budget will have an increase of 9.12% over the accepted budget that you all did last year. It is worth noting several factors. It is expected that we will only use approximately 95% of last year's current budget for 2020 and 2021. Our budget proposal will cause the current tax rate of 0.52 cents per $100 current tax evaluation to remain in effect. We will remain tax neutral. The proposal also will leave current water and sewer rates intact. 2020-2021 had many factors that impacted our current budget. The most obvious was COVID-19. The budget was prepared with that in mind and caution due to the unknown ramifications. We are thankful that the impact was not more severe. However, we continue to benefit from unprecedented growth residentially and commercially. We are aware of the future demands that places on staff to provide services our current residents are used to receiving. We are making necessary additions to staff in the planning department, for example, to just meet those current demands. We also have increased part-time staff in Parks and Rec as that facility is continuing to be built methodically per the master plan. We have heard from our consultants and experts. We now have more clear options and plans to move forward immediately to ensure that our infrastructure is being added to and upgraded as necessary to handle our water and our wastewater needs. The Public Works Department continues to provide great service in return on our actual costs. We are, however, adding this year a major piece of equipment that will cost just under $300,000. We have budgeted funds appropriately to maintain the services required, yet knowing we are growing. We are still playing catch up in certain areas. Due to the ability to save funds, in this year's budget, we were able to pave the current town hall parking lot, for an example, in the 2020-2021 budget, even though it was not originally budgeted for that. This needed to be done for several years. We are mindful of having to patch other parking lots and also streets that need to be replaced. We will continue making necessary street repairs and replacement of other lots and have those items in our current budget going forward, proposed budget. We will continue growing Troutman ESC Park. In the budget, there is funds to add a concession stand, restroom facility at the end of our newly, hope to be paved next week, parking area. We will make necessary upgrades to the landscaping around the new amenities. We are hoping to add more structures for picnic areas. That will be subject to certain projects being on budget or less than we have budgeted in for. We continue to add to our streetscape throughout town. The security of our citizens is not only a statutory obligation, but our priority. Our police department is growing in personnel also with the addition of an SRO at the elementary school. We are getting new uniforms of you all's approval going forward in this year's budget. We are getting, and let me clarify that in just a minute. When I say new uniforms, I don't think you all want to pick the context of the uniform, but the design, if there's any changes there. And that's what I meant to clarify that statement. We're getting new speed notification trailer and other warning sights for speed as well. We will make a purchase of 2 F-150 trucks to add to the police fleet. This is not an aesthetic thing, but a well thought out return on the dollar of cost savings. The fuel economy savings and resale value of the trucks will far exceed the upfront additional cost of each vehicle. We are planning on growth for our town by adding properties that may become the new town hall location, also the future streets that are projected to come. We look to grow appropriately. This budget allows us to continue serving the citizens appropriately. More importantly, it confirms our values and peeks into our aspirations. Another quote, "It is not necessary to do extraordinary things to get extraordinary results," by Warren Buffett. This budget kind of exemplifies that. Thank you, Mayor and Council members, we appreciate it. I stand for any questions that you all may have, and Steve is here to vouch for all of our department directors and his own hard work.
Great. Any questions for Mr. Wyatt or Mr. Shealy?
As I remember looking through the budget and looking at this letter, it seems like we have made great improvements in each department, from expanded planning to the things the police department needed, the signs are going bad, the new vehicles, to Parks and Recs concessions, so, and then the town hall future, looking at the properties. So it looks like we showed growth in every area, and yet we were able to keep our tax base the same, so I think you guys have done a great job of that. And your presentation to the public on the radio was very good to help instill that to people.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Shealy, tax rate, Troutman, compared to our neighboring communities, where do we fall?
I'm personally not familiar with Mooresville or Statesville's tax rate. I think we're
Okay.
very similar to the county's rate,
Okay.
but I'm not sure about Statesville and Mooresville.
We are significantly lower than Statesville. They used to aggravate us as being higher, but they are higher, and they also asked for an increase this year, even though most municipalities receiving state and federal monies were able to offset some of the infrastructure needs, because that money's tied to specific things. But it's my understanding they may not have to go up on their tax rate as the last meeting they had, but we are still significantly lower. I don't remember the exact number, Mr. Mayor, but we are lower.
All right.
They did go up on their utilities, am I correct on that?
They
And
absolutely did. And
I want to note that we're remaining the same, even though we're a big customer of theirs, we're remaining the same. So, it's through efficiency and planning for some of these things that we're able to do that. But it also, I think, is another indication to us, which there always have been, and we're working on it, that we need to continue looking at all of our options in our utilities department, water and, especially sewer.
yes, sir.
If you understand my situation, what I'm saying.
Yes, sir. Statesville's current rate is .55. It's just shy with the decimals, but .55 if you round it.
Okay.
That's almost 15% higher than ours.
If there are no other questions or comments from Mr. Wyatt or Mr. Shealy, any comments from the public? If there's anything on the website, I should have asked that earlier, but okay. I will now declare this public hearing closed. Council, you've heard and have had a opportunity to thoroughly go through the budget. This time I will ask that we consider adoption of Ordinance 0521, titled Town of Troutman Fiscal Year 2021-2022 Budget Ordinance. Is there such a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? Motion is made, received a second. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion passes. That takes us to the next items on the agenda, which are official comments from council. I'll start to the left.
Okay, I just want to make comments that, again, I know you're the interim chief, but your police department really stands out in the news a lot here lately. And what a great job your team's doing. We see that too, recognize. I mean, 4 stolen cars picked up this week was like just another thing that you guys do here. And the budget, like I said, with the mayor, that radio thing was well received by several people. I had an interview with Iredell from the Free Press.
Yes, sir.
That did really well, I thought. And again, outstanding citizens in this town. It makes me an honor to be enrolled this role in this town.
Other Harris?
I wanted to comment, I'm grateful for our recognition of the two people tonight. I wanted to comment when Ms. Saunders was speaking, but I knew I would cry too. So, so hopefully they're watching this later. That holds a special place in my heart because of what happened last year and how she stepped in. It means a lot to me. Of course, earlier this year or last year, I was recognized for almost the same thing. So again, I didn't want to say anything because I was going to cry. But I'm glad that we were able to recognize those two citizens. Miss Powell, her granddaughter, and I are really close friends. And just seeing Miss Powell in person, it helped me understand her granddaughter too. So we have great citizens here in Troutman. Just today I was at a store and another older lady was walking out and she couldn't hardly walk. And the lady in the store, I told her, I said, just go ahead and help the lady. She stopped working so she can go and help. And I took a picture of it to go out and help. I said, that's the town that I live in, and I'm so proud to be in this small town. So, and the last thing, I'm not sure if I can address Ms. Starks, but I have information here, my information, so we can keep you updated on what Mr. Wyatt was talking about, the information about Tally Street.
Correct, and believe me, we have been diligently for years now working on that sidewalk project down there. It has been on our minds foremost. And as our town manager mentioned, unfortunately, we're working with the state of North Carolina and the federal government. And the federal government has pretty much stepped up with the money to get the project done. But the state of North Carolina has dropped the ball as far as passing those funds on to us with the approval to proceed. And my thanks is to our town manager for when he started with us, immediately picking up this ball and carrying it and staying on top, along with our interim planning manager, Jonathan Wells, to push this thing ahead. But believe me, Ms. Tartt, we are well aware of that situation with the sidewalks, and we do empathize with you very much on that, and it's very much on our mind. And as soon as we can get Raleigh in order, we'll get the sidewalk built. But one thing before I die is I hope I won't see that sidewalk and be able to walk down it a little bit. And I'm sure you too as well. Maybe we can walk together. But so thank you very much for that. The second thing was that to kind of pick up on Councilman George Harris's comment that I also listened to the radio show yesterday, as I often do, and it plays into a scenario that in a meeting that several of us were in the other afternoon, Monday afternoon, that kind of really alerted me to the fact that while we all, I'm sure, strive, we maybe need to strive even harder to keep our public informed of why we do things, especially when it comes to spending their tax dollars. And this I think has been done with this, and I think the situation with our parks, we try hard, but any chance we get, whether it's verbally or electronically or through our meetings, our message board, our Facebook, on and on. The whistle stop is a good thing because, believe it or not, a lot of people do read that. We hear about things, everything coming off the computer now and internet. Well, people still do read paper, and I believe they still read our whistle stop. So all of those chances and opportunities to get the word out of why we do things and our intent behind it, and the reason we're doing it, so the people just don't think we're just sitting here pulling things out of the air and thinking up ways to spend the money and do so recklessly, that they know this is in response to what we've been asked by the public to do, and we feel that it's the right thing to do for the town and to continue its growth, and I'll say small town feel growth. So I do want to commend on that with this budget, and that we continue to keep the public well informed in any way on any time we, especially again when we spend their tax dollars. The last thing, and then I'll be quiet. I was looking, going back to the rezoning a while ago the situation with Mr. Lineberger on Eastway Street, and with Jonathan, town manager, present, I would like to, and the council. And I was reading over the consistency statement, you know, why we voted and used this consistency statement to do so, to rezone that, which I did second the motion, and I have no regrets. But I feel like we need to look at those properties surrounding that are still classified heavy industrial, and perhaps be proactive. And unless we just definitely want to keep those in mind for O&I, to maybe redo those for highway business. There may be a reason for not wanting to do that, but if we're doing it with 0.63 acres right in the middle of it, I'm finding a hard reason not to justify on those two sides and the rear of the property, not to be consistent and go ahead and be proactive and come up with an offer, put it to the P&Z, and bring us an offer or a proposal, you know, to rezone that, all of that HB.
I think you bring up a real interesting point, Mr. Heckler. I think at the heart of this really, with our working with Mr. Lineberger was, and he mentioned it during his talk there, the difficulty that anyone would have in developing any of those properties in its current heavy industrial zoning is that it abuts residential district, and in our UDO it requires a 50-foot setback between industrial and residential areas. 50 feet when you're dealing with relatively small, his parcel is only about 2/3 of an acre. That takes up, I believe, about half of that property. So if you have a piece of property and there's a requirement that you are unable to develop half of it because it has to be a buffer, that's a pretty draconian restriction upon that property, and it really applies to all those properties along there. Some are not as are narrower than, and others are deeper, but it still could be argued that that's maybe a pretty significant hardship and a disincentive for those properties to develop as industrial properties as opposed to, you know, commercial or some kind of mixed use or residential instead, or institutional and civic and office as the strategic plan is prescribed.
Well, I you know, unless, and I'll just be so bold as to make the request, and if anyone on the council sees otherwise, please speak up, but I would like to make a request of the planning department, town manager, and planning department that you gentlemen look into the rezoning of that property to, you know, to downgrade to highway business as you see fit, and you know, go through the process and bring us a proposal. If that's you know, what you determine after your investigations or investigation that would be in the best interest of that area, and for the reasons that you just mentioned.
So that I'm clear, you're speaking just of the property to the north and to the south
Well,
of
maybe look beyond that as well, sir. Yeah, I mentioned those 2 or 3 areas, but beyond that, if it makes sense, you know, from heavy industrial downing it to H&B, or, and maybe there may be a good reason in a few cases to go ahead and downgrade it to O&I as opposed to HB.
Just an observation, doing kind of a third-party rezoning without the active consent of the individual property owners.
Yeah, I can't see any reason why otherwise. I mean, based on what you just said there, to me, if I were a property owner along there, I would, you know, say the same thing. It just makes sense to go, you know, downgrade that to, or downzone it to HB or to O&I as opposed to, and again, I feel like me, I cannot remember why that was zoned that way to begin with, but it is. But, you know, it doesn't mean we can't go back and look at it in today's light and you know, come up with a proposal. And again, like I say, I'm making this request, but at the end, after, you know, you gentlemen get together, make your investigation, you determine that it's in the best interest to leave it as is, then come back and say so. But I feel like at least it needs looking into from a proactive standpoint.
Anything else? Okay. Mr. Now?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you, sir. Being that our next meeting will be after our 4th of July parade and festival, first I'd like to just thank Emily and Chuck Gallion for doing the great job of getting everything organized, considering last year due to COVID, we didn't have our annual 4th of July parade and festival. So I'd like to invite our entire community and our friends and our families to come and support our parade and support our festival and embrace it, and really appreciate it this year, being that we didn't have it. But Emily and Chuck are doing a great job getting participants for the parade, and they're going above and beyond, getting some food trucks, getting some games for the children to be at our festival. So again, I want to invite all our community to come celebrate with us. Also, the budget, I'd like to thank our town manager, Ron Wyatt, our finance director, Steve Shealy, and all our department heads that put this together. It was a collaboration of caring and committed to make this work for our town and our community. So I really appreciate all that hard work. Thank you.
Ms. Williams?
Well, I have a few things, quite a few things, sorry. Last night was the first in-person in over a year of the Lake Norman Regional Transportation Commission. And I'm just going to highlight some things that really pertain to the town and everything.
Thank you.
Instead of going through everything else. But the US 21 and Flower House Loop and Houston Road project, that's going to start back up. They're going to start acquiring right-of-ways. And unless I misread something on the PowerPoint, that's a $3.5 million project. It was slated for the fiscal year 2022, but that was before September of 2020. So the current fund now for it is for fiscal year 2024. But they're, like I said, they're going to start restarting to acquire right-of-ways. US 21 Cedar Lane to Barium Lane. Good news, I guess, maybe on that. It's on hold for quite a few years. Likely after 2029, unless something drastically happens. This really doesn't pertain to us, but for the people that use the express lane and everything, they sold their 1 millionth transponder in April. Are you a good customer of them?
Yes, I am.
So am I.
I have them in all of our vehicles. And I would like to apologize to our town manager that in the foreseeable future, and I don't know how much longer in the future, I can't really help with the radio station. I would love to. I enjoyed it the time that I did go, but I can't do it for now because of obligations to bus children where they need to be going. I would like to say it was a nice, this past Saturday, it was nice to see that the Rotary Club was able to start up their Miles for Matt again. That was really nice. They had a good turnout. I had seen Darren before that working on the route and everything for them, but it was nice to see that the people got to do it, and Matt was a wonderful guy. I had the privilege of teaching him when I worked at the elementary school. And my last thing, I would, this is just sort of a little pet peeve. If our town manager could speak with whomever needs to be spoken to at Saddle Creek and get them to put signs up.
Already handled.
Oh, yay. I mean, I literally,
It's not just one.
I literally have watched a truck come down Old Murdoch, turn right, and go up to the red light and turn on Old Mountain Road. And I thought, man, you could have went out a whole lot easier way. And they do have a sign over in ABT that shows which way for 77, but a lot of them come down and want to go left. And I've noticed that signs there in ABT, it's not really the correct interstate signs. It's more of a navy instead of that other color blue. But thank you so much for being proactive.
I visited with them last week and made the request, and they said they would accommodate. Planning department's already sent them letters telling them this is basically what the parameters are of what you can do, and allow them to decide the size and that. But then they'll, even though we're making the request, they'll still submit the application to come forward. But
Right.
visit them, it may have been week before last.
I think it was 2 weeks ago.
Sometime in that neighborhood, but we, yes ma'am, we started.
But I understand if truckers are coming from the pilot, it tells them to turn on Old Murdoch instead of going up to the stoplight, which would be better, because I witnessed today, there was a car wanting to turn left, and a truck swung way out to turn on Old Murdoch, but he still ran all over our curb.
Even though DOT frowns upon it, that's why I like the huge rocks that we used to have there that got moved.
Right.
It helped protect our curb for one, and two, it kept them off of our greenway and the concrete that's at the end of that.
Mhm.
And I really like the big rock concept because of that. Anybody made mistakes, then the rock's gonna stop it. But,
Right.
yes ma'am, that's exactly part of the motivation that I went for is that, exact term you're speaking of.
Okay. Thank you.
So that, you know, we put the signs up there and they blame the GPS.
Well, and I
And,
understand
you know,
GPS is gonna take you the shortest route, because
Yeah.
I love that, because it
And-
takes
and-
me the shortest route.
But again, even Paul Bryant had gone up there and talked to them, and they promised to tell the drivers. And just the other day, kind of similar to you, there was a driver that came up south, was trying to turn Old Murdoch, was sitting there in the turn lane, could not because the car's coming out.
Right.
And it must sit there for 5 minutes, and by the time I'd already gone on, you're still sitting there waiting, trying to find
Right.
space to where you could, I say, a driver could swing out and go there. And in addition to the coming out of the left and all the other things, when it's just, if they would just use a little common sense, it would be so much easier, as you say, to take a left and either go out 77 or to go out and, I guess there at the Cat Center, I would hate to see them do that, but maybe you can take a left there and then go back through, New Murdoch Road or
Right,
Murdoch Road.
right.
Straight through instead of coming out there at the Walgreens intersection, refer to, anything to stay away from that particular intersection.
Right. Because when the trucks do block, and luckily there's not been an accident, but when they are trying to turn in on Old Murdoch and there's somebody trying to turn left, they can't see the traffic coming to see if it's safe enough for them to pull out.
Right. You're exactly right, yeah, but I agree, thank you, Doc, I appreciate it. God bless you, I hope you're successful. You got your work cut out for you with those truck drivers. I'm sure the business people up there are willing to work with you, but the truck drivers, that's going to be the difficulty part of it.
Well, I really do think once they have some signage that we ask for, that will help, but then we also can put additional signage up similar to what you've already discussed, showing I-40 this way, I-77 that way, and it's only X amount of miles. And I think they will allow us to do that or share that expense with them before they leave the parking lots. But I will say even Saddle Creek is having a hard time getting the truck drivers to understand what their own preferred entrances and exits are. And that's one reason why I think they're eager to help identify with the signs. And it'll take a little bit of time, but we'll get Google doing the right direction.
Right, yeah, that's the other, getting them to change as well, because that's what I've been told, was that Google doesn't help with their instructions, and as Sally said, coming out of pilot, it tells them to go the wrong way, or at least the wrong way in our way of thinking.
Thank you. Anything else, Ms. Williams?
No, thank you.
Awesome. So I'll comment on a couple of things that have already been commented, but I'll be brief. Glad to, I think, officially meet Miss Powell. I probably saw her a time or two when I was going to get my physical, Dr. Griffin, but it's been a long time. I'll leave it at that. Good to see Miss Sherry here, and great recognition for both of them. I did want to reiterate the budget appreciation. You did a good job for your first budget, corralling the staff around to get that done. Steve, as always, not sure what we're going to do next year and your last budget. And so, hey, I can tell you're weeping. But yeah, yeah. But again, appreciate the work you've done over the years, providing our financial picture each year, and also sharing how we're going to move forward. So, thank you for that. Was at the farmers market the other day. I did buy some tomatoes. Had yet to. They're green tomatoes. So I'm gonna fry them somehow or another. And hadn't done it yet. So. But it's good to see folks back at the farmers market, and glad they're starting to start to open back up, and quite a few folks were out there. And I happened to think Miss Williams was out there as well. So I think I
saw somebody else too.
Yeah, well, but I'm not done yet. I think I'll go over and borrow some honey.
Yes.
I think somebody else sent their wife out to get something to cook, but.
She came in with honey too.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah.
My first prize in dire need of some sweet honey, so she brought some along. Okay.
All right. So and thanks for mentioning Miles for Matt for our Rotary. It's been a year that they weren't able to have the 5K. Rotary was able to do that along with the staff who really came out and supported them, and had a chance to talk to Chief Payne and also with Emily a little bit about understanding the route was a little different, but I think folks are very receptive and turned out to be a great day. So good opportunity to raise some charitable funds in our community. As I mentioned on Monday, Mayor Annarella's wife was in the state park. Wanted to send his appreciation to the Troutman Fire and Rescue as she had an accident in our state park, and I promised I would mention that at our meeting. So although we recognized them a month ago, they continue to do great work in our community, and we appreciate that. Those are my last comments, and so I'll turn it over to Mr. Wyatt for any comments.
Just to add a couple things you all said, the farmer's market, I actually went with Emily and Zach today to go do a farm inspection that's required, but a lot of people think that some of those rules that the town of Troutman come up with them, and that's not the case. That comes from the North Carolina Agriculture Extension, and just to remind folks that are listening and the press that will be reporting that part of the funding that we had for that down there was to do a farmer's market and for so many years, and of course we had to follow those rules then. But there has come issues with apparently people not being real farmers and growing their own things. But I can tell you the farm that we visited today was absolutely in full force, and enjoyed the couple very much that was there. And they have two different types of tomatoes we spoke about, but I enjoyed the farm visit. But a lot of people, I don't know that they understand how much work and effort goes into providing something like that. So to hear you council members talk about you and your families have visited to do business with some of those vendors is appreciative. I know we discussed this week with those that having consistency from all the vendors shows up makes our community know that they can come there and find a variety of different items. This week, I think we was down to 5 people that actually showed up from the vendor side. So that's the other encouraging part that we're trying to do from the staff level. To go with what Councilman Now said about our festivities at the fireworks, of course, we have had the Rotary Club in years past handled that, and then COVID happened and several things happened, and now the county's in charge of the fairgrounds, and they used to have different rules that, for whatever reason, applied when Rotary was the tenant that could sublet the facility out, but now that the county's doing it directly themselves, there is strictly a no alcohol policy. So we are just making everybody aware it's a family event and we will be there as it has always been, but the town is actually doing the event that evening, and it's not sponsored by any nonprofit group, and because of the county's way of leasing that property and their own rules, we're not allowed to have that there. Most people didn't use alcohol, but those that did, you can't. You don't bring your own, don't show up, it won't be sold. No alcohol. We actually have our police department will be there to remind everybody it's not allowed. So I did want to stress that. And speaking of the police department, if it's appropriate, we did not do it as a line item. I would like to ask you all to consider amending a town ordinance with personnel policy when it comes to take-home town vehicles. Our current policy, and Gary can remind me exactly, but I believe it was in the neighborhood of 4 years ago that it was changed. The policy used to be 20 miles, and then it was changed down to 15 miles with much discussion and thought process that was going on back then. I can say that things have changed throughout our area. We had Sergeant Benj and Interim Chief Payne and I made several inquiries with the communities that are around us. The policies vary from town or municipality. Some, first of all, none are in existence were 15 miles or less. None were. There was about 10 in the pool that were interviewed within our area. Some small towns, some a little bit bigger, like Statesville and Mooresville as an example. But there was 3 that were 20 miles. There was 3 that was 25 miles, and then the others had a variation of town manager or town police chief approval, and there was 2 in particular that had little to no policy about it. It was just not a policy at all, not discussed. In our recruiting law enforcement officers, I can tell you that most of them live well, I wouldn't say well, but most of them definitely live outside the 15 miles. One of our hires that's going through the process actually lives in the city limits already, which is an anomaly to find those situations. In our recruiting efforts of trying to get qualified candidates, we are finding that the mileage policy is simply handcuffing us, using their jargon, as to how we can recruit qualified applicants. So I'm requesting that you all would consider a motion that would allow us to amend our take-home town-owned vehicle policy to be 25 miles. We discussed doing a 30-minute thing that some other agencies have doing, but then that gets into who's going to determine what 30 minutes, and am I the one driving the 30 minutes, or is Sally doing it to where she's going to take her 45 minutes, but I can do it in 30. So instead of getting into things of that nature and even using Google, the pin drops, depending on some of those have gotten so accurate, as you all know from your own devices and driving, some of them are time current. So you may have a half hour at 6 a.m. in the morning, but 6 p.m. it may not be. So instead of leaving a policy that was void or cloudy, and speaking with the interim chief, and he's of course here for any questions that you all may have also, we're simply asking that it be modified to a 25-mile thing. That way it covers, or you all, your option, if you would follow our advice, is to go with a 20-mile, but either town manager approval or police chief and town manager approval for certain circumstances beyond that. Either one. 20 miles to where it could be, and I'll use the perfect example. The detective we just hired lives 20.7 miles from here. So that 0.7 miles, if you went to 20, he wouldn't be allowed to operate the vehicle, even if he was on call. That's just a real example of that situation. So I'm either asking that you all consider amending to 25 miles or 20 miles with manager approval in certain conditions with the police chief.
Okay. Council, you've heard from Mr. Wyatt. Any questions for Mr. Payne? Is there consideration for a motion to amend our current policy from 15 miles to something different?
I'll make that motion that we amend the current policy from 15 miles to 25 miles.
Okay. Motion's on the floor to amend our policy from 15 miles to 25 miles. Is there a second?
Second.
Any other question or comment? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes.
Thank you. That's all that I have from that, other than I would like to echo you all's sentiments that on the budget, that the staff worked well and the report kind of spoke for itself, but I don't think that I can really get the picture out there for the public to know, using the quote that was there. I really like that, because I do think that our staff here is mindful. That's why they perform so many different tasks other than the one that they're specifically hired for usually, to make sure that our work gets done at the end of the day. And I'm very appreciative of the staff and you all as a council. Thank you.
Great. I did mention I also saw our school board chairman out there. Not sure that he was able to pick up anything, but he was on the phone and running. So quite a few folks out at the farmers market. So and I think I failed to mention that there were some good cookies out there too. So I might have had a few of those. Young lady who was baking. I can't remember sweets.
I think that's it, Squeaks.
No,
Yes. What's the name of it?
No, it's sweet something.
Sweet something.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, they were good. So hopefully they'll continue to grow, and we'll get more folks out there. If there's nothing else from staff, I can have a motion to go into closed session.
I'll make that motion. We go to closed session.
Motion is made that we go in closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143. 3.318 11A6 A5. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion may receive a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Who do you need in the room?
Our finance director, well, it's not going to take long. Everybody can stay.
Okay.
It's no issue at all.
All right.
Well, how about
We're back in open session. Is there any other business for the council? Okay,
Yes or not from staff?
thank you. If not, I'll accept the motion.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Motion is made. Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you.